Hi Rangika here, this is English for Wednesday, and today we're going to be using the plans that we wrote yesterday to write our own poems. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how I used my plan to make my poem, and then you're going to use your own plans to make your poem. If you want to follow the pattern that I've used in my poem, you can, but if you want to make up your own pattern, that's okay as well. Now before I start, remember we've been doing work on patterned poems. So our poems all have to have a pattern. When I'm doing mine, see if you can figure out what the pattern in my poem is. So this is my plan from yesterday, Rangakaher, and what we're going to do is I'm going to look at the first part of my plan. So the first type of shoes I've chosen to write about are flippers. The people or the person who I've chosen to wear these shoes are divers. The sound words I've chosen are flip, flap, flop. And the adjectives to describe the appearance or what they look like is flat and flappy. And then down at the bottom, I've chosen my line that I'm going to repeat several times in the poem. And I've chosen look at the whoever's feet. So the first one, diver. So look at the diver's feet. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to use this repeated line as the first line in each of my verses. So each different type of shoes is going to be a new verse, and this is going to be the first line in each verse. So my first verse says, look at the diver's feet. So I've used my repeated line and put the right word in. Look at the diver's feet. Then I've done flat flippers, flappy flippers. So what I've done is use the words that I've used to describe what they look like and the type of shoe and made it a poem. So flat flippers, flappy flippers. Then my next line says flip, flap, flop. So I've used the sounds that I've chosen and just put them together, flip, flap, flop, for my third line. So that's my first verse done. There's 3 lines in this verse, and in this verse I have written the type of shoes, I've written who wears them, I've written sound words, and I've written some adjectives that describe their appearance. And I've also done my repeated line. I use this as my first line. So look at the diver's feet. Flat flippers, flappy flippers, flip, flap, flop. So that's my first verse done. I'm going to go into my second verse now, which is the rollers that children wear. So like I've said, my repeated line is going to be the first line in each verse. So the first line, I skipped a line, sorry, because it's a new verse. Each new verse you have to skip a line for. So my repeated line, look at the children's feet. Now, if we look back at the first verse, I have chosen the adjectives to describe what they look like and the type of shoes. I've written that in this line. So that's what I'm going to write in this line to make it a pattern poem. So the adjectives I've chosen are slidey and glidey, and the type of shoes are rollers. So I have written slidey rollers, glidey rollers. And then my last line up here is my sound line. So I've chosen the words that I've written in the sounds to write them in my last line. So I've written swish, swash, swoop. Now, so far, each line is the same on each verse. I've just taken out or changed whose feet we're talking about. So look at the diver's feet, look at the children's feet. My second line in each poem tells me the type of shoes and a word to describe them. So flat flippers, flappy flippers, and slidey rollers, glidey rollers. And then the last line in each of my verses has sounds that those shoes make when you're wearing them or when you're moving on them. So each of my verses follows a pattern. So my last verse now, I need to follow the pattern. So the pattern so far is the first line is the same, just changing out whose shoes they are. So look at the lady's feet. Now my plan says woman and my poem says ladies. It's okay to change some of the information from your plan when you're writing your poem. That's why we have a plan, so that if we have some different ideas or some improvements, we can change them from the plan when we're writing it up. So look at the lady's feet. Now my pattern so far tells me that the second line has to tell me the type of shoes and what they look like. So I need to look at the type of shoes, which is clogs, and the words I've chosen to describe them, and I have chosen clumpy and clunky. And I need to have this in my second line. So I have written clumpy clogs, clunky clogs. And then my pattern for the third line is the sound words. So for my diver's feet wearing flippers, I have said flip, flap, flop. For the rollers on the children's feet, I have said swish, swash, swoop. Now, if I look at my plan for the clogs, I only have 2 sound words, but I have 3 for the rest, so it makes my pattern a wee bit off. So what I have done is I have used the 2 sound words, clop and clap, and written clop, clap, clop. I've just repeated another one so that each of my lines has 3 words. So that is my pattern poem, and that's how I wrote my pattern poem. If you want, you can use the same pattern as me. So you can have your repeated line first, and then you can do the type of shoes and what they look like, and then the sound line last. Or if you have your own pattern, you can do your own pattern as well. Before you start your work, I want you to look carefully at my poem. Usually when we are writing, we write to the very end of the line. But in poems, a lot of the time, the lines are very short and we don't need to write until the end of the line of the page. Each new line of the poem needs a new line in your book. And each new line has, if you look carefully, a capital letter. All the first words on every line has a capital letter. And another thing that you might notice is that each verse, so this is the first verse, the second verse and the third verse, each verse only has 1 full stop, and it's at the very, very end. I don't have one at the end of every line. I have a full stop at the end of the verse. But at the end of the line, we use commas instead.